back to my channel. I'm Rachel, the owner and creator here at the Eclectic Cottage in Spokane, Washington. Happy Friday, everyone. For today's video, I finished the other of the two upholstered benches that I had sitting around in my kitchen. I love the way that this came out, a little bit different direction than the last. Hope you guys like it as much as I do. And without further ado, let's get to today's project. For today's video, I am making over the second of my little upholstered benches that I had laying around in my kitchen. This is in an effort to make a little bit more walking around room in there. And if you caught my last video, I finished up one using DIY paint. For this one, I'm going to be using Sweet Pickins Milk Paint. But of course, the place to start is always by removing the top and getting that fabric off. This one had a couple of layers. One just kind of covered up the fabric edges, and then there ended up being 2 layers of fabric and then a weird kind of batting layer that I had to remove. Now, I have to admit, I love reupholstering little benches and stools like this, mainly because I can't sew to save my life, but I love fabric, and this gives me an opportunity to kind of play with fabric without having to sew a single stitch. One thing about this bench that was kind of new to me is that it was actually nailed down into the base, and the nails came out with the top. So I had to be very careful as I went around not to poke myself on the protruding nails. So once I got this last layer of fabric removed, I then had to get rid of all of those little nails. Once I had all of the fabric removed from the top, it was time to work on the base of the bench. This bench was covered in a pretty thick black paint, and it had a lot of chipping and little dings in it. So I decided to give it a really good sanding, just using my palm sander and some 120 grit sandpaper. I wasn't trying to get all of the paint off, but I did want to get down to a little bit of the wood so that when I did my distressing, it wasn't necessarily back to this black color. Once the sanding was done, it was time to take my little bench back inside and get it cleaned and ready for paint. I'm starting off with my crud cutter. I really want to get rid of all of that sanding dust, any kind of residue that might have been left behind, and just get it nice and clean. So I'm spraying it down really, really well and then just wiping it off with a dry shop towel. Once I was finished with the crud cutter, I went over the entire piece again, this time using my mister bottle and some clean water. I like to make sure and remove any crud cutter residue that might have been left behind, just in case it interferes with my paint. Once my little bench was clean and dry, it was time to add some color. Like I said earlier, I'm using Sweet Pickins Milk Paint. This color is called Artichoke, and I absolutely love it. I did not add any extra bond to my paint this go around, mainly because I had sanded almost down to the wood, and I figured in a few areas, if I got a little bit of chippiness or crackle, I would be okay with that. So I'm just going over the entire thing with 2 coats of the milk paint. Once my paint was completely dry, I took my little bench back outside and did some more sanding. I'm using 220 grit sandpaper this time, and I'm just basically trying to smooth out my paint. Sweet Pickins Milk Paint does tend to be a little chunky at times, and sometimes it can leave those chunks on your piece, and I like a smooth finish. So I'm going over the whole thing. I'm also doing a little bit of distressing as I go. And I did end up with just a little bit of crackle and a couple areas of chippiness. Of course, those were in areas that I couldn't reach with my sander, so I ended up having to use a little bit of 220 grit sandpaper and go into those areas by hand to get them smooth. Then it was back into my kitchen to clean off all of the sanding dust so that I could seal my little bench. Now, Sweet Pickins Milk Paint, like DIY paint, does require some form of sealer, and normally the DIY waxes are kind of my go-tos for all kinds of paint. However, I decided to go a different direction with this little bench, and I'm going to be using Sweet Pickins Dark Oil Wax. The oil waxes come in 4 different colors. There's clear, white, dark, and black. And for this, like I said, I'm using the dark oil wax, which will soak into the milk paint and really leave me a beautiful, kind of aged patina. So I'm just applying that dark oil wax with a small little chip brush. I'm going over all of the areas with a nice thin, even coat, just making sure that I have it spread pretty evenly and over the entire piece. And once I have it completely coated with the dark oil wax, I'm just going to walk away for about 10 minutes and let it kind of sink into that paint before I come back and wipe back the excess wax. Now, I have used the oil waxes several times over many years of DIY makeovers, and there are a couple of tips that I will pass along. Number 1, you want to make sure to remove all of the excess oil wax. I have accidentally missed a spot before, and let me tell you, once it's dry, it's impossible to remove. Next, I would advise to go over your piece a couple of times to make sure it's as dry as you can possibly get it when you're done. And then lastly, if you have to touch the oil wax anywhere with your fingers, you will probably want to re-wipe that area, because I've found that if I leave my fingerprints in the oil wax, they dry there like that, and then they are there forever. So if you don't want your fingerprints left in your piece, make sure you wipe it back down when you're finished. Once I was done working on the base of the bench, it was time to go back to work on the top. I decided to add a couple more layers of batting just for some extra cushion. So I cut that out to size, and then it was time to move on to my fabric. I normally use canvas duck cloth for my upholstery projects, and I thought this particular fabric was absolutely beautiful. It is the reason that I painted the bench the color that I did. And so I cut out my piece, and then I went ahead and steamed out the wrinkles before beginning the upholstery process. Normally when I upholster a project like this, I like to start on the long sides. So I gather up my fabric. I like to fold it over just so that it has a nice clean edge. And then I add a couple staples, and then I just kind of pull the fabric along as I go. Once I have this side done, I'm going to flip it around and do the opposite long side. That way I can pull my fabric nice and tight as I staple it down. Once I was finished with both of the long sides, I did flip it over just to make sure that I didn't have any wrinkles in my fabric before moving on to the shorter sides. For those, I'm doing basically the same procedure. However, at this point, I'm also gathering up my corners and stapling those in place as well. Once I have them stapled down, I take my scissors and just cut off that little extra tab of fabric so that it doesn't get in the way when I go to screw the top back to the base. And of course, at this point, the only thing left to do is to reattach the top to the base. So I reinstalled the hardware that came with it and then screwed the top back down in place. And then my little bench project was complete. I absolutely love the way that this came together. I think that artichoke paint is perfect with this fabric, and I hope you guys like it too. Well, that is it from here for today, you guys. I hope you liked my little bench project, and I hope you're not bored having two of them in a row, but I needed to get them finished and out of my kitchen, and I just couldn't get this one done in time for last week's video. So there you go. Anyway, I personally love how it came out. I hope you guys did too. And if you enjoyed today's video, please remember to give it a thumbs up. I so appreciate that. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and then just hit the little notification bell so you don't miss anything. And then of course, don't forget to drop a comment below and let me know what you thought of today's project. Just a quick reminder too, I do carry a full range of DIY paint and products here in my shop and also on my website, and that's www.theeclecticcottagespokane.com. It's listed below in the description box as well. And I do carry DIY paint and products, Sweet Pickins Milk Paint and products, in which Cobalt is still on sale through the end of July. Also, Roycycle Treasures decoupage papers, and then of course some redesign with Prima. And you guys, I have in my hot little hands the beautiful, beautiful new release from Redesign with Prima that will be going live July 23rd. I think I can start giving you guys little hints on the 16th, so stay tuned for those. And then let's see, for Friday's video, I really honestly don't know exactly what that's gonna look like at this point. I have some projects kind of in my mind that I might tackle, so we'll just have to wait and see what I come up with. I hope you can join me back here on Friday for that though. Until then, have a wonderful rest of your week, beginning of the weekend, and right into next week. And I will see you back here next Friday. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it. See you then. Bye.